Omakase, the life and words of author M. Kieran. Hi there! If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living, my pronouns are they, them, and this might just be the earliest edition of the podcast. Early for me, not so much for you. Why is it early? Well, I generally like to jump into the podcast with a little outline, not a script, because that's too much work. I have no outline today. I know what I'm going to talk about. I have my little points here. Max said tapping on their temple. But I'm starting super early. Why? Because December is here. I'm recording this at the very start of December, and you will be listening to it on the very first week of December as well. This is the first episode of Omakase for the month of December in 2018. The year is wrapping up. And you know what else ramps up? The random encounters of life. If you're unfamiliar with this term, it's something that I bring up every once in a while. It's a sentiment that originates, of course, in gaming and video games, where suddenly the party of adventurers would stumble upon a group of monsters that they have to battle. A random encounter. Why do these things happen? Well, because something has always got to go wrong. Something has always got to get in the way. And that's how the random encounters of life happen. I'm recording super early because our fridge has stopped working. And I know this is very riveting. This is very riveting monologue. I know. We live in an old house, had an old fridge. It's about time that it died. It's just how it happens. We're going to be holding a memorial later today. But I have people coming over to look at it / maybe install a new one. We have to see into that. That means there's going to be a lot of noise in the house. And noise is what comes out of my mouth generally when I hit record. And this is my podcast. I can't have their noise in my podcast, okay? So, I don't know how quick this is going to be. It probably won't be. I have already rambled for several minutes about how early in the morning this is. I haven't even finished my cup of coffee. That's how early this is. Welcome to a super early bird edition of Omakase. But anyhow, wow, what a strange opening. If you're unfamiliar with the podcast, and if you're still tuning in, the format of the podcast goes a little bit like this. There's 3 segments: my week, where I talk about my process, what I've been working on, what I've been doing, the media that I've been consuming. We have the second segment of the show, the viewer questions. Today we're going to be talking about self-doubt and what to do about characters in our stories who happen to be really, 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 really crappy people. And of course, for the third segment of the show, I didn't have time to come up with a prompt, so instead we're gonna do a life advice exercise. It's December, so let's do a little bit of planning for goals for this month and the upcoming year. Before I tell you about my update, though, let's go over some items of housekeeping. The song that you hear at the beginning and at the end of the show is Dream of Green by the OC Jazz Collective. Link in the description down below, as well as a link to treating me to a cup of coffee, supporting me through Patreon. Both ways will get you a shout out on the show. And of course, the email that I have created for you to send questions, omakasepodcast@gmail.com. Talking about random encounters of life, now that we're sliding into my week. I'm recording this on the 2nd of December. The month is already a mess. Too many random things have already happened just in the course of 2 days. I wanted to do an AMA, and I wanted to do a big answer-a-thon, and I looked at my schedule, and I thought, well, I have this much time to get all the podcasts done before the end of the year, where I like to take a week or 2 off, just because it's always chaos. Except the time is now way more limited. I think I have an idea for what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna tell you because that would be a spoiler. But if you have questions, personal questions for me, and writing advice questions, still send them to omakasepodcast@gmail.com. I'm actually gonna tackle one that I got. One of the questions we're tackling today actually comes from an email I got. So there you go. All right, we're already like 7 minutes in. Let's slide into my week. What have I been doing? What have I been up to? What have I been creatively creating? I am back to writing. Welcome back. Revision Max is dead. Long live Writing Max. Man, this is the sort of thing that I tell people and nobody believes me. And and sometimes I don't believe it myself. Let's just be honest. Sometimes I forget that that spending, 3 to 4 months just revising novels really makes it hard to just jump back into writing. My first day of writing this new novel was really hard. I'm not gonna just sugarcoat it. It was a hard writing day. In part because it was a new story. A new really weird story. You know I love me a weird story. Oh, it's so weird. Oh, it's so weird. It's a sort of story where I'm like, please make it through the first third of it and then I'm gonna blow your mind. Just constant, mind-blowing reveals. That's the plan for this novel. And the first session, I have a weird new narrator, and there's a bunch of story things that I have to keep in mind because establishing plot twist is what you do. And finding the flow of the narrator, getting into, the flow of the story. It was a very slow first session. And it was funny because I guess I've been doing this for long enough that I can notice the usual suspects when it comes to a really hard beginning of a story. Finding the narrator's voice. I say this every time. I spend the most time during revision fixing the beginning of the story. We've been talking about first chapters for a long while, and just the idea that and it's been a sobering idea, because the first session was hard, the second session was hard, and the following ones were also really hard. But it's because I'm stuck right at the beginning of the story, and also because I haven't written in forever. This is the thing that you have to keep in mind. I get messages all the time from people saying that they haven't written in years, and they're afraid that they've lost it. And what you need to remember, just like, training yourself to run a marathon, is that if you don't do it for a while, when you get back into it, it's gonna be hard. That's just how it works. Just like your muscles, are not used to that sort of activity anymore, same goes for your brain and your ability to creatively forge words and put them on paper. It takes time. It's getting slightly better, and it's the sort of thing that if it wasn't for the experience that I have, if it wasn't for all the times that I spent revising first chapters, I would have gotten really stuck during the writing process. But every time I was getting stuck, I would remind myself, I'm gonna revise all of this most likely. This is gonna get revised. And I know that this is something that people say, but I wonder if people actually internalize it. And I guess part of it is also the language, because people say, like, your first chapter sucks, or your first chapter is going to suck, or you should let your first draft suck. And I feel like it may be an issue of language, because nobody wants their story to suck. And I feel, or to be bad, or to just, be inefficient, or to just, nobody wants to, spend months writing a novel, feeling in their core that they're ultimately creating something bad. I feel like that's part of human nature to want to, it is, we love to see things finished, we love to complete things. So the idea of writing a novel, knowing that there's more work ahead, is kind of contradictory to the way we think. But that's the way novels are made. That's the way really, really good novels emerge. We write them, we revise them. Not a single novel that you love was written as a first draft and then published. That's silly. That doesn't happen. So, it's been a rough first couple of sessions with this story. And every time I get a little stuck, I just remind myself, I want to revise this. Might as well just get through this first draft as fast as possible. Or might as well get through this first 1/3 of the story as fast as possible. Because the first third is a little slow, and I can already feel myself, I can already feel Max from the future telepathically telling me, yo, this is gonna get cut. This is gonna get cut. Sorry to break it to you like this, but I feel like this is gonna get cut. Aside from writing, and I feel like I feel like I have to externalize this. It doesn't make you a bad writer. Because there's this whole sentiment of like, well, if you're good at something, you do it effortlessly, and, it comes to you easily, and it's never a problem. And of course that's not true. That is absolutely not true. Anyone listening to this with experience in another field, another creative field, whether it is creating visual art or creating music, can tell you that You don't just sit down, make something, and it's good. It takes time. So that's what I've been doing this last week. Writing, back on the writing wagon. Putting words on paper. Pushing through the beginning of the story. I'm actually kind of confident about the first page of the story, but I have said that before. I have said that in the past, and you know me, you know how my first drafts go. Anyhow, I haven't really been doing much in consuming media, mostly because my lovely spouse and I spend most of the week playing Pokemon, because we really love Pokemon. But other than that, the other thing that I did, and I want to go through this really quickly, I think I'm going to make a whole, Omakase extra on this, for the winter break, let's just call it that. And, there's been a lot of studies, that have come out recently about just how much time people spend on their phones. Actively looking at the screen, not just holding the phone or, having it in your pocket. And recently, iOS came up with an update, or I guess a feature on their iPhones titled Screen Time that would track or tell you how much time you spent actively looking at your screen, or just the time that the screen for your phone was powered on, and breaking it down on what apps you were spending time with. And this is not new. It's been out for a month, 2 months, but I got it a month ago, and I kept watching the reports that it gives you every week regarding how much time I was spending on my phone. And I don't want to say it was startling, but it was a sort of thing where I realized, I talk about, time management. And it was very sobering, but in a good way, just to see, wow, I spent a lot of time on my phone. So the other thing that I did this week, I did something that people call dumbing down. Because, iPhones are smartphones, so you make them a dumb phone. I took out basically everything that was a distraction on my phone. It's also part of the reason why I've been a little quiet on Twitter. Is just I haven't been able to look at Twitter. And it's been great. I've actually been spending just way more time, not just working, but also spending time with my lovely children, with my lovely spouse, and also just having a lot of time for myself. It's been great. I want to do a whole video talking about valuing boredom. I know it sounds like a crazy title. It sounds like a clickbait title, but I feel like it's the only way that I can externalize it. But I'm going to continue on with this experiment, with my dumb phone. I'm going to continue with this experiment for a little bit longer before I report to you guys. And now, before we move over with the next segment of the show, let's talk about the people who make Omakase a reality. This show is brought to you by you! All the lovely people treating me 2 cups of coffee and supporting me through patreon.com/mkaren. During this segment of the show, I like to just give a shout out to some of my most generous patrons, starting with Atilak. Atilak has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about their writing and their art over at deviantart.com/ahtilak. And Hero Song. Hero Song is writing LGBT plus positive novels. You can find them on smashwords.org. Just do a quick search for Hero Song. And, of course, A. Howard, Elisa Dudley, Amelia, Angela, Brenda, Lishadra, Gilbert Goodrow, Irina Phoenix, Lacey, Mark Maruska, Nicola, Pat Eitson, Polycraftool, Soulmuse, and Synexia. Also, apologies, I'm doing a podcast at the very start of the month, and that's when Patreon pledges are coming in. So if I don't shout you out right now, or if I didn't shout you out, and if I don't shout you out during the end segment of the show, it's Patreon's fault. Yep, let's go with that. Right off the start, let us begin with the big question. A dear viewer reached out to me asking about doubting oneself, about doubt, about one's skill, and about the ideal of being able to live from one's writing. A dear listener reached out to me and expressed their doubt, their fears that even this, the thing that they believe they are good at, writing, even though they love it and it's what they do, they're afraid that they may not be good enough. They're worried. They're afraid that even though this is the thing they call their own, they worry that it may not be good enough to sustain them. It may not be good enough for them to succeed in writing, in publishing novels, and getting the work out there. And this here, it's a hard topic to talk about. Because it's a real conversation. And I want to disarm the sentiment. I want to disarm these fears, these doubts. I'm not quite sure where to begin, but I do feel that, I mean, I can tell you from my personal experience that making money from one's novels is not just a one and done thing. It's usually a matter of releasing multiple novels and expanding the people who read your work. Word of mouth is the most powerful force in the universe, and that one right there is what will help you. But making a living from books takes time. Writing a book takes a long time, but that also, making a living, takes some time as well. And this is not to discourage you, but this is just kind of more of a fact, of a matter of fact. If you decide to go independent, it takes time to build your reader base. If you decide to go traditional, it takes time for you to get an agent, to convince someone to want to sell your work, and then for that person to sell your work to publishing houses. That takes time. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes, you send out your manuscript and agents don't get back to you for months. In some nightmare scenarios, they just never get back to you. And this is not to discourage you, but it's just to establish the reality of the situation. This takes time. And this is the thing why... Because this reviewer was referencing something I said a long time ago. I talked about the bad writers that I met, and the bad writers who wanted something out of writing. And I just want to clarify that wanting to make a living from your writing is not a bad thing. All of those writers that I was talking about were people who wanted something external from their writing. My best example is the one guy in class who proudly proclaimed that he wanted to become a published author so people would finally respect him. Which is funny, because nobody respects writers. That's external to the writing. Being able to make money from your writing enables you to create more writing. It's the reality, though, and one of the things that I mentioned, and I hint at this, but I've been hinting at this, but I will gladly fully externalize it. When I talk about how you shouldn't try to write a book out of spite, or you shouldn't try to catch on to whatever's the hotness right now, because it doesn't guarantee you to, make bank. Like, get rich quick schemes don't work for books, because books take a long time to write and to sell. So, I've known people who were like, oh, this kind of book is popular right now, time to get on the bandwagon. This book that has honestly been out for several years now is finally, exploded, everybody's reading it. It's now my time, said random guy in class, to exploit this niche. That's now part of the mainstream. That's a bad idea, because books take a long time. And I never knew a single one of those people who, even finished writing the books. But back to the main topic at hand. It's not a bad thing to want to make money from your books. It's not a bad thing to want to make money from your art. And there are plenty of people who do. It just takes time. And the main step of the process, the biggest thing, is that you have to put your work out there. You have to talk about it. You have to let people know. I have talked to a lot of people, a lot of very creative, amazing, writerly friends who create their work, but they are so terrified of sharing it that they just don't. They don't talk about them, they don't tweet about them, they don't let anybody know, and then they're like, why isn't my book selling? And, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, you kind of have to tell people. You have to talk to people. You have to yell into the void and send lots and lots of messages in bottles. That's the process. And it takes some time. And someone out there is like, but what if the first book I sell sells really well? What if it explodes? And that's a thing that could happen. I don't think you should be betting on it, and I definitely think you shouldn't be expecting it to happen. Not because to lower your expectations, but to kind of align yourself with what you're actually doing. Get rich quick. I can't speak today. Get rich quick schemes don't work with books. You can't just write a book, get in, get out, make a quick buck. That just doesn't work. If anything, because places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble pay your royalties delayed. So it's the thing where like they pay your royalties 3 months after you actually earn the royalties. Like, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but if you're having economic troubles, trying to sell a novel quick is not gonna fix the problem. Novels take a long time. And even once you publish one novel, the one you publish after that is gonna sell way, way, way better. That's just how it works. Your readership grows, your sphere of influence grows, and more people find you. I've talked a lot about the whole, making a living from writing. And I'm not saying, don't quit your day job. Mostly because I hate that sentiment. It's the whole idea of like, put the thing that makes you happy second. But you should, be mindful of your finances. I don't want to say this is common sense, but this is sort of thing where you have to look at it. And I guess it's different for me because I've always been I've been described as cold, matter-of-factly. But I've always found comfort in certainty and facts, I was only ever able to quit my day job once I looked at the numbers and I thought, okay, this is manageable. It took a while. And I did save a lot of money from my old job. And I have been very lucky. But it still took a lot of time. Man, I didn't want this to be a real conversation, but here we are. It's too early to have a real conversation. I have like half a cup of coffee left. I can't speak. Las palabras nomás se me van. Se desaparecen. Ya no están aquí. Ya no las tengo. Where did the words go? Ya no sé. I don't know. I'm slipping in and out. Once I have enough of a vocabulary, I'll be able to just weave in between English, Español, Nihongo. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be weird. when I'm old and I finally lose it, I'm just gonna be a mess of the 3 different languages. But back to the topic. Back to the main question. Back to doubt. Because I know that it's very easy to anchor oneself on the fear of, I'm never gonna make money from my craft. It's never gonna make me any money. And that's fair, It's not a fear unique to writing. Like, we should make that very clear. People who make visual art, people who make music, everyone struggles with this particular point. But ultimately, the way to succeed, to emerge from it, is to continue creating what you love. Because ultimately, that's what gives you life. Telling stories. Forging these worlds and these people with words. That's what gives us life. Life is not all about work, and not all about money. Because when you have all the money in the world, you will not still be happy. Because there's a part of us that seeks to feel fulfilled. And if you're listening to this podcast, I am certain that thing is telling stories. Let's talk really quickly about doubt before we move over to the next question, okay? What if you're not good enough? What if you're looking at everyone else and you see their ability to create stories and you think to yourselves, they are on a completely different level. I'm just ranks beneath them. I'm never going to be that good. I'm never going to succeed. let's walk it back to what we were talking about earlier. I've spent months revising. I hadn't touched my writing set. I hadn't put my fingers on the keyboard with the intent to write a story creatively in months. I walked back in there and it was hard. But I know, because I've been here before, that it's gonna get easier every time that I sit down. Not only because the act of writing will return to me, much like one can train themselves for a marathon once again, but also because I grow closer to the story. I want you to look at writing not as a skill, like in a video game. Your writing skill is level so-and-so. But rather, your ability to create stories as the skill, plus your link to the story. The closer you grow to the story, the easier it becomes to write it, because you have grown used to the characters. You know how they talk. I get really stuck with dialogue on the first draft because I don't know what the characters sound like. I think I know, but it doesn't come naturally to me. I have to stop there and think how they would say what they would say. But as that link grows stronger, the writing becomes easier. The writing flows more naturally. It almost feels effortless. But even if I wrote a book every month and my writing skill was maxed out, pardon the pun, your link to the story, if you started a new book today, would start at 0. And no amount of world building and character workshops will increase that link. The only way to develop that link with the story is just to write it. But that's just how the way things are. Writing takes a long time. And also, when you work on it, your skill will improve. You will grow closer to the writing. That's the way things work. If you feel doubt, if you feel uncertain, if you don't know if you're ever gonna be good enough, you will be. Just keep going. Keep going, keep writing, and keep having your mind open to learning from the world, to learning from your own mistakes. No matter how many times you fall, you get up. No matter how many times life gets in the way, we get back to writing. And one thing before I leave. I know I've gone really long on this one. You can look at other writers and think to yourself, wow, they are so good, they're so confident, they know what they're doing, and I don't. I can assure you that when you look from the outside, it's easy to feel that way. But if you were to be inside of their mind, I'm sure you would find their thoughts oh so similar to the ones that you feel. Okay? I hope this was helpful. I think that I got it a little bit too real there, but hey, keep going, okay? Tell stories. Give yourself fully to them. It takes time. But just like it takes time for the crops to grow and the trees to grow, in spite of that, we know that the fruits of our labor are on their way. It just takes a little while. Okay? Okay. I needed a mental reset because now we're going to talk about another serious topic. Welcome back to the Serious Cast. I'm your host, I'm Karen. I think my cat is scratching at the door. Or maybe not. The people who are supposed to come over and start looking at the fridge are like about to get here. So let's move along with the show. I got a question from a dear viewer. And this is something that I might be a huge radical on. I don't know. It's the thing that people who don't write stories don't get this. Oh, I sounded like such a hipster when I said that. In stories, Sometimes we have to write characters who are awful, awful, awful people. People whose views do not align with our own, and whose language, whose expressions are not ones that we would ever, 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 ever use. The question that I got was regarding a particular kind of character. And really, the particulars of this don't actually matter, because this character could be a homophobic person, transphobic, racist. It doesn't matter. It's ultimately, at the end of it all, a character whose narrow view of the world are antiquated and bad, and they're not good people, but they are a part of the story, and their language is a part of the story. And I understand how someone can realize that they have a character like this, a character usually in an antagonistical role, who uses language as a weapon. I'm really dancing around the fact of, using certain slurs in writing, particularly from the mouths of, these kind of characters. So I guess I'm gonna stop being all flowery and just get to the point. I got a question from a dear viewer asking about characters in their stories who use slurs. Whether it is homophobic, transphobic, or racist slurs. And I mean, a whole matter of other things, It's not just, focused on those three particular areas. But you have these kind of characters, and, what do? This character speaks this way, and they are this way. You don't agree with those things. You don't agree with what they say. But if they say those things in the novel, who's to say that the readers won't assume that, it is a part of you? It's the sort of thing that, I really don't like it when someone is like, oh, this author had a racist character in their story. They must be racist. And that's not how it works. Like, that really isn't how it works. And that's the... Okay. I don't want to rant. I can feel myself about to rant. But it's the sort of thing where that always becomes the focus, is like, oh, this writer has a homophobic character in their stories. They must be this way. Which is silly, because no one ever brings up that point, with all the murder that happens in stories, oh, the antagonist killed someone. Does the writer feel that way too? It's silly. And I feel like that's a thing from people who consume media as opposed to people who write media. Because sometimes you will write a racist character. Sometimes you will write a homophobic character. These are the things that happens. Does it make you a bad person? I don't think so. But once again, let's return to the question at hand. What are my tips for handling a situation like that? Should you just stay away from it? I don't think so. I think that you have to write the story that comes to you. Especially if you're caught in the first trap. You should just, as I said, just write that thing as quickly as possible so you can start revising it later. And it's the sort of thing that, like, if you're writing the story, you can get really caught up on this. You can get really, caught up in this particular element and never move forward. And my advice is always to just write it as it comes to you. Even if it involves having a horrible, horrible person in your story. Because I'm about to get to the advice. What are my tips for handling a character like this? I really only have one. Because someone out there's going to be like, don't have characters who are like this. And I don't like that because, first and foremost, sometimes a story may ask for it. Sometimes this is a natural progression of the story. Sometimes it's just something that happens. And you should write the story as it naturally comes to you. It is that magical space in fiction when we are writing the story and it comes naturally to us and we don't have to think about it and we don't have to second guess ourselves and the words just flow. That's the good stuff. That's the best stuff. So, back to the point at hand. What do you do in a situation like that? And I feel like it's ultimately a matter of revision. You shouldn't worry too much during the first draft because, again, when you start revising, you will make everything work out. And even if in revision you realize, well, actually, this trait in this character didn't really come through in the story and it really didn't matter at the end, you can change it. But enough for the actual advice. What do I recommend for tackling a character like this in revision? you should look into what they say and look into the way that you portray this character. Like, at the end of the story, are you portraying this character to be right? Are you portraying them on their, like, do the characters around them agree with them? Does anyone challenge them? Do they just treat their hateful words as fact? And I'm not saying you have to have, that trope where the racist person comes around and learns the error of their ways. You don't have to do that. Ultimately, unless you want to, but ultimately, it's about the treatment of the character. I like to think of it as the way in which the camera treats them, in which the story presents this character, the way in which the ultimate message behind them. Like the nightmare scenario that I experienced with one of my friends was the moment in which the big homophobic character in the story ends up being right at the end. Like, the things they said ended up coming true, and they escaped the whole mess of the story unscathed, and at the end of it all, when everything was said and done, they actually ended up kind of winning. And that felt bad. That felt bad because it felt as though their success, their victory was attached to their antiquated, awful, crappy beliefs. So it's the sort of thing where you have to really analyze the story, look at it, question how you're presenting this character. And someone else is going to say, well, question whether you need them in the story to begin with. And I feel like that's just the natural process of revision. If you revise a story, if you look through it, and if you emerge out of revision truly asking the questions, you will arrive there. You will look at that character and ask yourself, did they need to be here? Everyone has been there. Everyone has been on that moment on the cutting board where they're looking at a character or several and they're going, okay, one of you has to go. Or all of you have to get melded into the same character for the sake of flow and a bunch of other story things. And that just happens. That's just the way things go. And that doesn't make you a bad writer. And having an awful person in your stories doesn't make you a bad writer. It is ultimately about how you portray them and the ultimate message that you carry through the story. Okay? I feel like I really touched this lightly, but I'm running out of time, so I may do a follow-up. If I said something that didn't make sense, yell at me and I'll explain myself in the comments. Or I'll explain myself as though, the police are outside. They're like, Max, we heard the podcast. And I'm like, oh no, what did I say wrong this time? Anyhow, I'm running out of time today, but let's just jump really quickly into the prompt, or for today, an exercise on preparing yourself for the coming year. I talked recently about how December is here already. If you're listening to this, it's the first week of December. It is the 7th of December. Oh my god, Smash Brothers Ultimate is out today. What are you doing listening to a podcast? Okay, joking aside. It is likely that if you have had a crappy year like a lot of my friends have had, you're emerging at this point. You find yourself at this crossroads, and it is very easy to feel the weight of these last 11 months on your shoulders. Time flies. Time escapes us. Life moves fastest when it is closest to us, and it is easy to emerge into today, December, and think to yourselves, wow, there were so many things I wanted to do, so many things I wanted to explore, and here I am. I don't want you to say I didn't achieve anything. I don't want you to say that, because that's not true. Like, just the fact that you're thinking about this, just the fact that you're analyzing how this year went, that's good. That's important stuff. Just thinking about it helps. Just being able to look into the reflection helps. Introspection is very important, not only for character development, but also for us to be able to look at the time that we have, the time that we had, how we could have done better, how we could have improved. If you're listening to this, you have a chance to look at yourself, look at the time you have, and make the most out of it. And that right there is a gift. Being able to look into oneself is a gift. Not a lot of people do that. A lot of people spend their entire lives just wondering why things aren't working out for them, while all the while they don't look at the mirror, or they don't look into the mirror. It is true that a lot of our problems are external. There's a lot of things outside of us beyond our control, but we are able to look at them. We are able to analyze them. And even if the lesson of the day is, I have no control over this, but my life can go on in spite of it, then that's good within itself. December is here. There is 3 weeks left in December. And when you say it like that, it doesn't feel like a lot. A month sounds like a lot of time, but 3 weeks, 4 weeks doesn't. You can feel it. You're going to have these many days off, these many days to write. But then you have to account for the holidays. And an extra 10% just in case that things go badly here and there. But this is part of living, to be able to look at one's time. And if you look at the calendar, I would like to inspire you to have a calendar, to look at it, put reminders on it. If you look at your calendar and you mark off the days that you can't do anything, the days over which you have no control over, and the days in which you're going to rest because you should actually rest. Look at those days that remain and ask yourself, what can I do? What can I achieve with these days? Because it's not about making up for the lost year. That's silly. Don't do that. Don't think about it like that. Because the year's just an illusion. The year's just an imaginary container for days. I'm not asking you to make up for 2018, but to see what you can make with what remains of 2018. And I mentioned this on Twitter, but if you look at those days and you realize that it's not enough time, you realize, I don't have enough time to do the big things I want to do, then make several small things. Make a couple small things. Or if anything, prepare for 2019. If this is the year that you want to start having a bullet journal, if you want to start doing diary entries again, start with December. Treat December as your launch pad, as the prologue for 2019. Just like I tell people, before National Novel Writing Month in November, if it's October and you're excited, just start. Just start. Just start doing the thing. Start enjoying it. Start having fun. Start achieving things. Feeling fulfilled. That's what life is about. That joy, nothing else can get you that. And if you're listening to this podcast, you love creating. You love making things. So make something. Even if it is making something for someone else or something no one's ever gonna see but you. Make the most out of the time that we have. Because time is limited. And even though you may be very young, even though we may have listeners tuning in, listening from their library at school, time is limited. And one day, you will wake up and it will be the last day of school and you will ask yourself, how did this happen? One day I was a freshman and now it's the end. 4 years gone by in the blink of hundreds upon hundreds of days, of thousands of moments, of millions of seconds. You have the time now. Make the most out of December and prepare. If you do something this week, between now and the next time we meet, prepare for 2019. Okay? Okay. And so, welcome back to episode 25 of Omakase. We're already at 25 episodes. That actually is almost half a year. And that's crazy. A year, by the way, has 52 weeks in it, so 26 would be the magic number, but that's going to be next week. I am most likely going to be recording a bunch of episodes relatively soon because my time is crazy. You know, you look at the calendar and you ask yourself, how many days do I have to take care of all of the Patreon content I have to make? The zine, the workshop. There's a workshop coming up this month, by the way. There's a lot of stuff, but that's what we gotta do. Time is not only of the essence, but it is the essence of life. So take care, have fun, and make the most out of the time you got. Okay? Okay. And now, time for the end of the video club before we call it a day for today. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. I'm just gonna give a shout out to every lovely person supporting me and treating me 2 cups of coffee. You don't gotta stay. You can go if you want. This might be a quick one because, you know, time. Have I gotten a new cup of coffee this week? Oh, ho, 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 ho. Yes, I did. You know what? I'll get the cups of coffee out of the way because I think, yep. Here we have good old friend Mark Maruska double dipping, treating me to a cup of coffee with the caption balsam bugs, balsam boughs, nutmeg, and mistletoe. Happy holidays to you too as well. I don't know what that first set of words is, but hey, thanks, Mark. There's things that I'm like, you know, having been born and raised in Mexico, and you know, the holidays are different in Mexico. So it's a thing where it's like, what, you never did this, Max? And I'm like, no. I didn't know. Oh, this is a funny story. I didn't know up until like 2 years ago that you're not supposed to eat gingerbread houses. Now, it's not that I have tried to eat a gingerbread house, but I assumed that it was like gingerbread and then some sort of sugary stuff that makes it all stick together. So you would make it and then you would eat it. I thought that was the point. And then Kitty, you know, my lovely spouse, explains to me that no, that's glue. And I'm sitting there, like just dumbstruck. We're at Target, we're shopping, and as we're talking about this, a lady walks by and I notice she starts laughing. And I know, that's at my expense. Because here I am thinking, you baked gingerbread! You baked gingerbread! Just to glue it together with glue? That just has never made sense to me. Ever. But, yeah, the holidays. I have no balsam boo. Oh, English. Oh, we're never gonna get... we're never gonna be friends, aren't we? Anyhow, hi there. Welcome back. End of the video club. I think there has to be edible versions of gingerbread houses, right? Because I remember my sister making one once upon a time, and I will remember eating it. And none of us died. So I assumed it wasn't glue that we ate. That would be funny. Jesus, don't tell me. If there has to be edible versions of gingerbread houses. There has to be. There's no way. There's no way all of us collectively did that. Anyhow, a big shout out to the lovely people making this show possible. A. Howard, Athalak, Alistair Baywood, Elisa Dudley, Amanda Stevens, Amelia, Amanda Palmer, Angela, and the other Angela, and Yexahoshi, Biting the Sun, Blarg, Brenda, C.E. Richards, Caitlin, and the other Caitlin, Kathy Lindsay, Lee Shadra, Christiane, Christine Dennis, Kristen Lofton, Clem Pastor, Dwayne Jackson, Eleanor, Erasos, Joffrey Raby, Gilbert Gaudreau, Hero Song, Irina Phoenix, Janosch Hebatsky, Jaytana Kirkwood, Jeffrey James Williams, Jay Sawicki, Juan Nunes, K.M. Anderson, Kameshwar Rao Shaluri, Kaylee, Kiel, Kitley, Lacey, Lier Kilo, MT Locatelli, Mark Maruska, Mary Foster Smith, Nicola, Nicole Grissom, Nicolay, Noam Sahar, Novels and Tomes, Pablo, Pat Aitchson, Polly Craftwell, Raquel Fernandez, Rhiannon August, Roa, Shimmertails, Sky D. White, Soulmuse, Sylvia Leitilla, Synexia, and Wendy Christopher. No, let me try that again. Wendy Christopher. Hey guys, welcome. I gotta get out of here. Time's up. I'm afraid it's time for me to go, kids. Look, I finished my coffee. It only took me 2 hours. That's not true. It took me 1 hour and 10 minutes to drink this cup of coffee. I'm gonna get back to living. Edit this episode. Lots of noise in the house, but I can't do anything about that. Hey, take care. Stay strong. Enjoy the holidays. I am most likely going to record a bunch of episodes. There might still be one regular Omakase for the end of the year. I think episode 26 will feel really right to do that. But we're going to have to wait on that. Thank you for tagging along, and I will see you on the next one.